Let's talk some trades. What's up? This is Tom Froming. The channel is TF Twins, and we're going to talk about the Minnesota Twins trade chips coming into this trade deadline. I think this is the best place to start looking is let's look in-house, internally, and kind of assess what the Twins have to offer. That's a big thing to me about analyzing kind of trade talks, trade ideas, trade speculation. It's a two-way street. You have to give something to get something, and you always have to consider the logic from the other side. What do these teams want? You know, there's a lot of, we cover the minor leagues on this channel, we cover prospects on this channel, we get attached to these guys, we love these guys, we're rooting for these guys, make it. But I don't think there's any such a thing as a non-tradable guy, an untouchable guy in this system ever. Depending on what kind of conversations you're having. Let's face it, you know, the Minnesota Twins in the major leagues, this is a flawed roster. You know, they're in first place. They're playing good. It's certainly a breath of fresh air from last season, you know, certainly that. And I think they've kind of found themselves in a nice position here in terms of what's happened with the rest of the division. You know, Kansas City and Detroit clearly just did not get it together. Especially Detroit, frustrating for them after having such an active offseason. Chicago is down on its luck, you know, defending champions. And Cleveland is, you know, all respect for that roster, that coaching staff, everybody on the baseball side of that organization. But their front office, their ownership, did nothing to push any chips into the table for this year. So I think the Twins find themselves in a very enviable position in the AL Central this year in terms of what they're looking at. So how do they take advantage of that? We're going to talk about that, and we're going to talk about some of the guys who I think might make sense as the biggest trade chips and why they might not make sense to other teams. Speaking of that, segueing into that, let's think about, you know, what the Twins' recent trades have looked like, especially in regard to pitching. It's very clear, you know, no surprise, the Twins need pitching. The bullpen is the most obvious need. But I certainly think for them, if they want to elevate, you know, if they're not just trying to last in the Central, if they're not just trying to win the AL Central, if they are trying to push some more chips in to potentially making a deeper run, winning some playoff games, potentially winning a playoff series, you know, let's not get ahead of ourselves here. Let's get that streak over with first. But if they want to do that, I think they also need to be taking a look at the starting rotation. Especially since, you know, there might be injuries to the guys they have in-house right now. You just never know. Health with pitching is always a huge question mark. Even the teams that feel like they have good staffs, you could always use some more depth. So, the big pitching trades the Twins have made of late. Let's think about what it took to get those guys. Kenta Maeda, it was Brusdar Graterol, a pitcher. Sonny Gray, it was Chase Petty, a pitcher, their most recent #1 first-round draft pick, a pitcher. Chris Paddock, of course, that trade didn't work out so well so far, at least. It was Taylor Rogers, a pitcher. So, in a perfect world, I think we would all hope that the Twins would be able to trade some bats, some hitters, to help out with the pitching staff. And I'm not sure that that's just going to be possible depending on what the market looks like, because, again, you have to think about the other side of the equation. What are the teams you're dealing with looking for? And, I mean, realistically, I think every organization across all of Major League Baseball is looking to inject some more pitching into their organization. I don't think there's any team that's like, yeah, we're set on pitching, we need some bats. That's not to say that your bats aren't going to hold value. That's not to say they're not going to be able to complete any trades without including pitching, but I just think that is what teams are going to hone in on. That is what is going to get you the best returns. You know, it's like an exchange rate. You know, that bats just aren't going to get back what arms are, and that I'm kind of hoping that's not the case, because it would be great if the Twins could flip some of their excess bats for some arms again. This organization, I think the lineup is pretty set. I think, you know, there's depth at quite a few positions. And they're top-performing minor leaguers, especially in the high minors, if we look at it that way. Probably your top two guys vying for Twins minor league hitter of the year right now would be Spencer Steer with the Saints and Matt Wallner with the Wind Surge in AAA and AA respectively. Steer, he plays second base, he plays third base. Now, he's played some shortstop. I don't think he's a really legit, like, long-term option. Like, he's an emergency guy you could put there, but, like, if Carlos Correa opts out, he's not a guy who's going to bridge you to Royce Lewis being back in terms of playing shortstop on an everyday basis. So in my eyes, and this isn't a shot at Spencer Steer at all. But in my eyes, he's an extra piece because if you look at it, Arise is under contract for multiple more years. Polanco is under contract for multiple more years. Urshela has one more year of team control. And, of course, Miranda has many, many years of team control still. So second base, third base, these are positions that are pretty well stocked for the Twins. Didn't even mention Nick Gordon, who's in that mix as well. Might be some other guys I'm forgetting as well. Just a lot of guys in those spots. So even without saying anything about Spencer Steer, it's just those are positions of strength right now for the Twins. Matt Wallner, a corner outfielder, mostly plays right field and hits left-handed. That's Max Kepler. That's Alex Kirilloff. That's Trevor Larnach. All left-handed hitting corner outfielders. That is a spot where the Twins don't really need another guy there. And he's playing great. Got off to a very rough start and has been just incredible since then, as Matt Wallner been in Double-A. So, it's kind of a handy thing that it just so happens that their top two minor league hitters in the high minors are also guys you can look at and say, we could move on with those guys. We could afford losing those guys. But that's my question, is that what other teams are going to be interested in? Because other organizations might have that same situation. It's a little bit easier to find second baseman, third baseman, left fielder, right fielder than it is a center fielder or a shortstop or a catcher or pitching. So, moving on to that, I certainly expect that the Twins will have lots of conversations about Steer and Wallner. And again, both of them, I don't think there's any reason they should be motivated to get rid of them. Like, I don't think either of them are necessarily playing over their heads or bound to stumble off or like attractive trade pieces, sell high pieces. But it just makes sense that those would be guys that they would be dangling out there. Pitching wise, it's been rough. It's been really rough for the prospects. Jordan Balazovic has been a huge disappointment this season. Unfortunately, Ronnie Henriquez, who they just got in the Texas trade, he's also been disappointing. You wouldn't think they would be looking to flip him this quickly, but he just sort of adds into that conversation of how disappointing the pitching has been. Matt Canarino was pitching great until he got hurt. He is back on the comeback trail, throwing again, so that's really encouraging. But that's another injury he's had that really makes you question how he's going to hold up. Some of the bright spots have been guys like David Festa. Kate Povich has also been really good. Steve Hadger was really good before he went on the IL. So these are guys in the lower minors, guys who were very recently drafted, who are doing better. Of course, they just traded Chase Petty. That was kind of a blow to the pitching pipeline. The number one pick of the last year's draft. So if you continue to kind of maybe trade guys out of that draft class, you're really hurting your pipeline, your pitching pipeline down the future. But let's talk about a guy like Simeon Woods Richardson, who I put in the thumbnail of this video. And I've seen a lot of people say like, oh, he's got to be untouchable. The Twins can't trade this guy. He's a really young pitcher, looking really good, a guy with a lot of pitchability, a great athlete, a young guy coming up and pitching in Double-A pretty well, holding his own for being one of the youngest guys at that level. Still, even after being there last year, his second year in a row, he's still one of the younger guys in Double-A. I get it. But again, what if the only way that you have to really address your biggest needs at the major league level is trading a Simeon Woods Richardson? Let's talk about that for a sec, because I have that same reaction too when I hear all these guys that we've been enjoying watching in the minor league system, all these prospects, and it doesn't feel good to think about potentially giving them up, especially maybe even for like a rental, potentially. Obviously we're not throwing specific names out there from the major league side yet, but sometimes it really seems crazy to be giving up potentially 6 years of a guy basically. For somebody that might just be a short-term piece on your major league roster. But let's think about the starting pitching at the major league level that the Twins have. And before I kind of go into this, because this may be sounding like I'm looking at this with rose-colored glasses, the Twins do have a lack of difference-making top-of-the-rotation pitchers, is how I would put it. But just taking a look at this year's staff, Sonny Gray is going to have an option for next season. It's a team option. I think that's a slam dunk that he'll be back next year. So that's one guy. Kenta Maeda should be well enough to be pitching at the end of this year. Maybe it'll only be out of the bullpen, but we would expect him to be back to full strength heading into next season. And he's under contract for next season, Kenta Maeda. So that's two guys you have. Of course, there is Joe Ryan, Bailey Ober, Josh Winder, all guys with multiple years of team control. We're already up to 5 guys in the rotation. You need a whole lot of them because somebody's going to get hurt. But at some point, Chris Paddock is going to be back. He had Tommy John surgery this year, so maybe around this time next year, he'll be back in the mix. That's 6 guys. Potentially Randy Dobnak. Obviously, he's just a massive question mark at this point with his injury has just lingered so on. But Randy Dobnak is a starting pitcher under team control for next year. That's 7 guys. There might even be somebody I'm free. Well, Cole Sands, we'll throw him into the mix as an 8th guy. So you can see, and there might be somebody that I'm just completely forgetting. I should mention that Bundy has an option. I don't think the Twins will pick it up, but you never know. And Archer has a mutual option, which those almost never get picked up. But maybe they work something else out. So those guys, there's potential that those guys might be around next year again too, depending on how things go. So when you go through that, it's like, all right, you want to hold on to whoever, whatever pitching prospect. Simeon Woods Richardson, let's say, because you think he's going to be good enough to be a starter next year. You might, and this feels stupid. This feels like a stupid thing to say. But you might not really have a huge path to an opportunity for a guy next year in the rotation if, things go well for these pitchers. More of your guys stay healthy than you're currently projecting. And that's not even factoring in, like, let's say you use Woods Richardson to acquire a guy who is under team control for next year, just for conversation's sake. Let's say he's part of a package that gets Frankie Montas to the Twins. And I know Montas, sort of just keeping up with the current news, he was removed from his most recent start due to a velo being down. So there's some injury concern there. But let's just use him as a conversation. We're just throwing him out there. He's a guy out there in the trade market who is also under team control next year. So, if you flip Woods Richardson for him, well, then you have a 9th piece for your potential MLB rotation next year. So it's not, I think you have to take all these things into account when you're thinking about, who you want to see the Twins trade, who you don't, who you think is untouchable, who you think is, guys to capitalize off their value. But again, you have to try to think from the other team's perspective. Nobody's going to be looking at Keone Cavaco, Aaron Sabato, and just thinking, oh, these are former first-round picks. Yeah, the pedigree. No, they're not going to care about the pedigree. What are these guys doing at the minor leagues? Why would a Twins fan or somebody following the Twins system want to get rid of those guys? Well, it's because they're not performing very well. So then you have to flip that around and consider it from your point of view, from a Twins fan. What if the Twins were after some guys like that? You wouldn't feel great about it. So you can't just say, hey, here's 3 prospects we have that are underperforming. Give us your best reliever or best starting pitching piece. You have to think about it on both sides. Kind of to that same point, with Tim Beckham playing so well with the Saints, with Jake Cave playing so well with the Saints, with Miguel Sano coming back from his injury. There's some other guys in there too. Teams aren't going to be that interested in those guys. I'm not saying they're not going to get traded, but you're not going to get major league pieces for your extra, depth guys at this point. Your 30-something minor league guys, you're not going to get major league pieces for these dudes. Again, you have to consider it from the team you're dealing with's perspective. I'm not saying I can't imagine a contending team being interested in a Jake Cave, but what is a contending team going to give you for Jake Cave? They're going to want to give you prospects. If you're a contending team looking to add a 4th outfielder or 5th outfielder, you're not going to give up a bullpen piece that you're relying on. So that's all I'm saying is you got to give something to get something. Number 1. And number 2, you got to think of it from the other team's perspective. And I don't think we're going to see a lot of challenge trades like we did in the offseason, which I was very impressed. I haven't been very rosy about the Twins front office of late, but I was really impressed with their creativity and ability to get those deals done. When you're trading major leaguers for major leaguers, like the Texas trade, the Yankees trade, the San Diego trade, which of course that doesn't look very good right now. But those are, again, challenge trades. Those are not easy to pull off, and they're very easy to second guess. Those aren't the kind of trades that we see mid-season usually at the trade deadline. It is prospects for major league pieces. Primarily, it's very rare to see that not be the case. I think that's going to continue. The extra wild card spot maybe adds a different wrinkle in that we haven't seen before, and maybe teams will sort of navigate things a little bit differently. So we'll see. The last thing I want to say is, Aaron Gleeman asked Derek Falvey about, like what's going on. They're having lots of conversations. There hasn't been any trades made. I'm sure they would love to make a trade sooner rather than later in regard to the bullpen. But again, it takes two. It takes two to tango. Why do the sellers feel any motivation to sell early? You might say, well, injury concerns. Okay, that would be for their guys on expiring contracts. But if they have, especially like a good relief arm who has multiple years of team control is going to be cheap, why are they motivated to trade that guy earlier? If they can't trade him for value they like, they'll just keep him and have him again, either to trade this winter, to trade next season, or maybe to try to aim for one of these extra wild card spots the next season. I don't think there's going to be much motivation. I don't think, there's any reason to criticize the Twins front office for not making moves right now, unless we start to see some other moves happening across baseball. At that point, I'll be like, okay, why are these other teams able to pull off some deals to address their needs this early, but the Twins can't? Until that happens, I'm kind of assuming that what Derek Falvey has said is accurate, in that just the sellers are not really motivated to pull the trigger on trades yet, and they're waiting for teams to get desperate. They're waiting for the field to present itself. They're waiting for more buyers to enter the population, and we'll just have to wait and see what happens. But that was just kind of a big talk I had on, starting to think about. Again, it's July, so starting to think about the trade deadline and what it means internally. But pretty soon I will make sure to have a discussion and highlight some guys that I think would make for very good targets for the Twins, and maybe even build some trade packages for you guys to check out. So be on the lookout for that. Thank you so much for watching this video. We'll talk again soon.